just to introduce us, if you have a look behind me, you can see our home behind me, which is the old Lilydale courthouse there, behind that lovely post and rail fence. And that's our current home, but it wasn't our first home. We didn't have a home, but we actually started on March the 11th, 1971. So we're just coming up to our 50th birthday next month. And unfortunately, we've got a celebrations and stuff planned, but of course you can't do anything. So, and I think like so many other historical societies, we were formed because someone needed something. And what happened in our case was the Shire of Lillydale was coming up to the centenary of their formation. They were created in 1872. So 1972, they were planning great big celebrations. And they decided, well, I didn't know anything about the history. So they called a public meeting, got a group of people together. And out of that came our Lilydale and District Historical Society. And the members then got together and thought, right, we'll have to do something about this. As I say there, the society was formed. It had no home, no collection, just enthusiasm and lots of knowledge. And I must say, fantastic support from the Shire of Lillydale at the time. So what the new members decided to do was, well, we'd better get out there and plan some displays. One of the people was a bottle person, so he got a bottle display going, and someone else was into fossils and rocks, so that was going. Someone else was into photography, so they gathered up photographs from people all over the place. And that slide that's there is actually one of the rooms of our display that those members put up in just under 12 months. So that went off really well. They had street parades, they had a ball, they had a dinner, they had all this. The council organised all of this great big list of events. And that was fantastic. But then afterwards, it was time for everything to go home, back where it belonged. And a lot of them didn't want it. They said, oh, no, you've got it, you keep it. So suddenly we ended up with a lot of collection, no home, just enthusiasm and knowledge, as I've said there. And then we had to then start working towards, if we've got a collection, we've got to house it. So we decided then, well, okay, we were formed because the Shire wanted us to be formed, so now they're going to have to help us. That shop that's there is actually taken in the old Lilydale Shire offices. And that building was gradually becoming vacant. So what happened was we approached the council and said, hey, this building is going to be emptied. There's a room there for us. Can we have the rooms? I said, yes, you can have the room. So we started off with one room, and then as people moved out, we took over another and another and another, and we ended up taking over the whole old Shire offices. So we operated out of there from 1976 when we officially opened the whole building as a museum with displays. We had about 7 or 8 rooms that were all done up with homemade bits and pieces and displays, and we had objects and all sorts of things there. And one of the things that has always run through our society and through our community, of course, has been that Dame Nellie Melba, the lady, Pamela Lady Vesti, who was Melba's granddaughter, kindly donated material to us, and we had a very substantial Melba collection. It got to the point that in '89, the members were getting older, and we were all starting to get concerned about the curatorial responsibilities of the collection, as so many societies do. So in '89, we approached the council, and the council actually agreed, after getting the whole collection evaluated and realising how valuable it actually was. They took over the operations of the museum, and the society stayed connected via our knowledge and resources, and we supported them. And at that time, Lilydale Council took the took the momentous decision to actually appoint a municipal curator. And they were the first municipality in Victoria to do so. And they appointed a lass. A couple of us were on the selection panel, and we appointed a lass by the name of Moya McFadgen. And Moya was just a young graduate of museum studies. She just graduated. She's since gone on, and she's now Dr. McFadgen, and she's a senior curator in the Museum of Melbourne. But she turned around and set the thing up in the museum up in a proper way. We still looked after the archival side, the files and that sort of thing, and opening up on the weekends and handling inquiries and things. So that was good. We worked very closely with the Shire for quite a number of years, and then they decided that, which was fair enough, they needed to expand and renovate the museum building. And they formed a trust to raise money for the collection, etc., and to raise money for the building. So we participated and raised a lot of money for them and gave it to the trust. So they did the rebuilding of the museum, and then we found out that there was no home for us. They decided that they were going to become a regional museum, and there was no home for us. So in 2008, we sort of ended up with no home. They had our files and our archives, and we couldn't store them. We had meetings at the local Athenaeum Hall, but we didn't have a home of our own. So we went on with like that for 2 or 3 years, still pushing the council. They needed us because we had the knowledge, they didn't. Because as you know, people come and people go when they work for councils, and they wanted us, so we just pushed them hard enough, and they'd bought the old Lilydale courthouse a few years earlier from the Crown Law Department after Mr. Kennett rationalised everything, and we secured that and moved in there in 2011, which we share with the University of the Third Age. So I guess that's our background, where we've come from. That's our home today. Because we share it with, it's a bit tidier now. We've put a bit of garden and stuff in. That one was actually taken at the time we moved in, but it's a lot neater and tidier now. But the interior is a typical courthouse. There's nothing in it, and not unlike so many other museums you go into. They've still got the working courthouse. That was all cleaned out. All we do at the moment is hang displays on the walls. We have no fixed furnishings in the courthouse because we have to be able to have it available for the U3A. But it actually forced us to do some focusing on who we are and what we're about. And we're basically an archive. We managed to get all of our files from the museum, and that was a bit of a battle in itself over the years, but they have revamped themselves down the road as well, and they really are now a cultural facility that has heritage displays and things like that in it for the whole of the Shire Yarra Ranges, which covers all the Dandenongs, right up the Yarra Valley. It covers up 4 of the old council areas. So we're happy where we are now, but we have limited space. So when we got the chance to move in there, we had to reevaluate, as I said. So we turned around and looked at our collections policy. I'm sure you guys have collections policies and statements of purpose as well. And our statement of a purpose was quite specific. We decided it was an archive. That meant that we didn't then have to take objects, but we could take small items if we wanted to, like we could take photographs, paper-based stuff, and we've taken a couple of very valuable paintings as well from people who didn't want them going to the museum for their own personal reasons. So that's our statement of purpose. We keep these very simple. What happened when we were created in 71, we were the only historical society in the old Shire of Lillydale. So we collected for every township that was in that municipality at the time. Now, what's happened is we've sponsored often formation of other groups, and other groups have formed, and so we don't collect anything from them, but we do have residual materials in our collection. But our collecting area, as you can see, is Lilydale, Churnside Park, Coldstream, Yering, Gruya, Colaris, Seville, Sylvan, Montrose and Kilsyth. And that's because there's not groups in those areas. We keep those. If someone started up in Coldstream as a historical society, we would no longer collect. We wouldn't necessarily hand over the material we have because that's a very tricky issue for us. Because we just don't need to make sure if you give it to people and then they fall over, where does it go? So we've got material that we've got, and if we can't help the people, we refer them on to the other history groups and historical societies. So if you wanted something in Mount Evelyn, for instance, I'd refer you to the Mount Evelyn History Group. And we've got them listed on our website as well. So the objects that we have, which are very few, relate to the area's past, its natural resources, the Aboriginal people. We've got a lot of paper-based files on the Aboriginal people. It's not an area we go too deeply into because we've got some terrific facilities up in Healesville, that Corandurk and that can help people that want that sort of material. Agriculture, industry, transport, trade. So that's really our statement of purpose in our collecting policy, and that's what we adhere to. So if you want to donate something that's Upper Yarra, we will give it to Upper Yarra. We won't accept it, refer the people to Upper Yarra or whatever. Okay, the major areas of our collection, as I've mentioned earlier, is Dame Nellie Melba. Not only, but because Lilydale was a place she grew up in as a child back in the 1860s, and she came back to, and that was her only home she ever owned in Australia, was at Coldstream, which in those days was it's all part of Lilydale. You don't trumble over things too much about it. So, and of course David Mitchell, her father, who established the Cave Hill Quarry and Cave Hill Farm, and was the largest single employer in the Lilydale township, and a very magnificent contributor to the history and development of Lilydale. When he died in 1916, the council referred to him as the father of Lilydale. So we have a lot of material on him, and of course it's all now been sold and being developed for residential development by the Kinley estate. So we've been involved there with them as well. But we've got lots of photographs and stuff that we've been able to share with them. So and we're making sure that they maintain and look after the heritage facilities that are there, because they're heritage protected by Heritage Victoria anyway. So we got Dame Nellie, as I mentioned. We have Lilydale and Yarra Valley history books, and I'll come to what our resources are in a minute. But we made a decision that we need a bigger library space. We've got a few shelves there. We've got something like over 500 books just from Lilydale and Yarra Valley, because nobody else is collecting them and has that sort of, we don't actively do it, but if we find them, we add them to our collection as well as to our library if we can get 2 copies of the same book. We have a massive photographic collection. If you remember at the beginning, I was mentioned about the first displays for the centenary. Well, Sandy Ross came along, and he was interested in photography and copied the photos and did the photos. And his collection of photographs and negatives, we have something like over 4,000 of his, and he's collected them over the years. And of course, we're still adding to them as more and more photos turn up. So we're gradually digitising them. So, and the last one, of course, is agriculture and viticulture and horticulture, which is still very, viticulture's come back into its own in the Yarra Valley, and we have quite a collection of again, it gets back to the families of the early Vingrenons that settled the Yarra Valley. There's Swiss connection and that sort of stuff. So That's another part of our collection. So the collection includes, as I said, very small objects, photographs, newspaper cuttings, books, archival material, audio and visual material, textiles, and we have a few artworks, not many, but a few that we consider were worth. Anything that is large and needs curatorial work on it and is relevant, we will refer them to the museum. They've got quite them in the last 2 or 3 years. We've had a lot of donations come in from overseas on Melbourne, and they have gone to the museum purely because they can maintain the textiles and conserve them better than what we can. We just don't have the space. Okay, so I've talked and talked and talked. How can we help you? I guess that's what you really want to know. That's what you're here for. As I said, we have about over 3,000 files on families, places, events, businesses, you name it. We've got these files, and we've got them all. We're indexing all the files step by step, but we also have a database. We establish a database on them. So people contact us and say, if you've got a file on XYZ, we can look up our database and see whether we've got our digital database. That's not digital, those files. We have no plans to digitise it purely because it's a massive project. We have to get funding for it, and I don't know where we get it from. I mentioned before, we've got all the local books, our photographic collection, which have been digitised. The other resources that we've got are the Lilydale Express from 1886 through to 1960. We've got them digitally. We've had them all scanned before Trove came along, so they aren't Trove standard. So we've had to turn around and we've actually paid to have Trove put up. They're through now till 1926. We got a grant from Prov a couple of years ago, and we've had a couple of substantial donations. So we got from 1886 through to, it only shows you 1920 on Trove, but it's 1926 they go through to. And we're working on getting the rest of them, but that's an expensive proposition. It costs several $1,000s to do each time. From 1960 onwards, we've got bound copies. So people can come in and put on the gloves and go through our bound copies that were donated from the old Lilydale Express, the newspaper. We've got the rate books from the Shire of Lillydale from 1871 through to the 1930s. They are all digital scanned copies of the rate books. We only go through the 1930s because that's when the big bound books would stop being used. We got parish plans for the area, which are helpful to us. A lot of them, of course, are available from the State Library, online on the State Library these days, but they weren't originally when we started out. We got birth, deaths and obituary databases. We've had a couple of members who sat down and gone through all of our newspapers from 1886 until 1960 and pulled out every birth, death and marriage that's reported in the Express. That's now been digitised. We put it as a database, so we can now turn those those articles up for people. And we've got a copy of the Lilydale burial registers, which is, of course, is now online as well. But the records that we've got actually make it a lot easier. There's a bit more information in them. That was our filing cabinet system. It looks very smart, doesn't it? We got a grant for that. Unfortunately, one of our first members, who was the council that led the push to get us established, when he passed away, he was a bachelor. He was a very, very wealthy man, and in his estate, we got $10,000 from him, from his estate, and we put it towards those filing cabinets. So that's like that. That's why we had terrible filing cabinets before that we got secondhand from everybody and anybody, but we invested in those and cameras, good digital cameras to photograph the collection. So the Lilydale Historical Society has been very active since about the 1980s with the internet. When I look back on the early stuff that we did, it was pretty primitive. But anyway, we've got 2 websites that we maintain, which is the lilydalehistorical.com.au, and we've got the nellymelbournemuseum.com.au. That's a virtual museum, of course, but that's the only Melbourne website in the world, dedicated website in the world. So if you want to know anything about Melbourne, and we have phone calls and emails coming through about people who are a chauffeur to Melbourne, who sang with Melbourne, who accompany Melbourne as an artist. We get all those people contacting us from all over the world. And that website, again, gives us promotion. And we've got the 2 email addresses for both of those websites. And we average something like, I think the other month we had something like 20 inquiries come in for a month. But we average 1 or 2 a week of different things, of local history and all sorts of things. This is the opening hours. Anyone wants to know, there's a brochure you can download off our website, which I've just got to update. But we've changed our opening hours. We're by appointment only now, which we don't like doing. We've had a tradition of when we say we're open, the doors are open. There's always the 2 volunteers there. But with COVID, it's been very difficult. We've got, as I said earlier, we've got a couple of our members got immune issues, and a couple of others have left the district and that sort of thing. So we're focusing on Sundays at the moment. So we're open on those other days. So we're from Friday, Saturday, Sunday and Monday. We're like you guys, we charge for everything. We find the libraries and the museum down the road make it very difficult for us because they give stuff away. We charge for research, we charge for photo sales, and because we have to generate income to pay. We pay a license fee, and then we have to pay all the utility costs, which everybody knows is not chicken feed, and particularly if you add in the phone and the NBN and the internet and everything. So they're our main sources of income, as research and photo sales. Sponsors, with our newsletter, we've got some terrific local sponsors who've been with us for years, and of course our membership. And our membership's what, $25 for a year for a full membership, and I think it's $15 for seniors and pensioners and things, and we got a kids thing as well. So we need the income to keep doing the things that we're doing. So this is our new Melbourne website. If you go into the images, go down to galleries. Now there we have all the different opera roles that Melba performed. The next one, that's some of the photos of Melba's funeral on the 26th of February. So that's just the sort of thing that we've got up there. We've got life story and all that sort of thing as well.
Mm.
There's brochures there, so you can download membership brochures, things like that. If you want to do we have people come around doing our wanting to do tours and things like that with us. We end up at Melba's grave and that sort of thing. So we do tour groups and things like that. But of course, with COVID, it's been really difficult to do a lot of those sorts of things. I go out and do a lot of talks on Melbourne and David Mitchell as well. But again, they've all been cancelled the last year or so. So you've got her biography, her performance and her family. So there's a life story there, her chronology. So we've got all the events of Melba's life going right the way through to today. We've got miscellaneous, there's all sorts of things. One of the big things people ask us about is Melba's cars. people are fascinated by Melba's cars, and we've tracked them. She had a Rolls Royces, and she had this, and she had that. We've tracked a lot of those cars. So it was about all the different cars that she had. That she didn't necessarily have those ones, but the people have tracked them down as being the same sort of cars and all that sort of thing. We have cars, beds. People want to know that they reckon they've got Melba's bed that she slept in a hotel. We get those sort of inquiries as well. I haven't tracked the beds. So then you've got the story of Melba's family, David Mitchell, and that's all his story of the Cave Hill. And the next tab down is the actual Mitchell family. That's David Mitchell's brothers and sisters. Some came out here, some went to America. So this is our Lilydale site. That's the Yeringberg Winery, actually, one of those photographs. So if you go into, yep, that's just an introductory thing. Go into the resources there. So in that, we've got all our different projects. We've got image collections there with the galleries, similar to what we've done with, you just click on that A to L there and go into, say, business. So there's only a very few selection of photos up there at the moment, but we're just putting the photos up there, and you can click on them and make them larger. The different galleries there have got different, they've got different elements, families and stuff like that. So it's got to all work. If it doesn't work, I'll yell. Now this one, so this is a map that we've done as some features of Lilydale. So you can, and this is what we're going to do for the main street eventually. So you go to the Lilydale station, click on that, and it opens up to the Lilydale railway station with a photo. So what we're working on is we're going to then put on the bottom of that a further link. So that will take you, for instance, to the story and the photographs about the railway station. So we've set that up so as we can just then add. So we'll be doing them up right along the main street. We'll do every shop. So go in, try them all. Because if they don't work, I want to know. And see, if you click on the get directions, you can actually then go, be taken from where you are to have it to that. So if you're in Lilydale and you want to find out where these places are, that's what that's designed to do. That's just the start of Lilydale. We wanted to put the key historic features of Lilydale up. So that's the Athenaeum Theatre, which is next door to us. We've got every soul, there's 450 of them that served in those collecting areas that we spoke about earlier. Stories behind the headstones. So that's So that's another project that we did. So every headstone up until 1930s had been photographed. So we then just put the stories around them. And we've had people come in and say, oh, look, I've got more information on that person. So what we've got there, if you can just stop on one of them, stop on that one, that's fine. You got Margaret Hamilton there. So buried in that grave is Margaret Hamilton and John Robert Hamilton. And then we've got what their graves are, their lot numbers, their age, etc., and then the inscription. And you guys helped us with the inscription, I might add, because you very kindly sold us all the transcriptions of all the headstones that you've done, so that helped us as well. Then we've got the link to the image, so that image you can see as a bigger version. Then we've got any obituaries. That we did the research and found the obituaries when the people died. So if you've got any obituaries, then we reference them into the Lilydale Express. That was another big project. So you can see, I mean, it's probably been overtaken by lots of other stuff now. But when we did that, that was a huge project for us. So, and we want to put the stuff up online. But if you notice, we've watermarked all our images because we have people ring up and say, look, I love that image, but it's got a watermark on it. And I said, well, that's because you have to buy it. But I must admit, we've had businesses who are quite happy to leave them with the watermark on. So we get promotion. They show them as slides and presentations to their clients and things. They've got our watermarks all over them. They're happy. But, you know, that's how it is.